Hello, and welcome to Soulful Conversations, the Animal Mediumship Conversations Series. So, I'm Annie Bourke, and I'm happy to share Winston's story with you today. I'm just going to share my screen with you. So, for those of you who haven't met me before, my name's Annie Bourke. I'm an animal communicator and an animal medium. So, it means I have conversations with animals who are living and animals who have passed over in spirit. And I've been doing this for over 12 years now. So, for those of you who do have animals in spirit, animals have taught me that when they pass over, although their physical body no longer exists, their soul does. Their soul endures. So, we can always have a conversation with them. There is no time limit on connecting with your animal. And that's really reassuring to know that there is no true separation. Yes, they're on the spiritual plane, we're on the physical plane, but through the power of telepathic communication, which is how animals talk to each other, we can have a conversation with them and get answers to questions that may have been plaguing you for some time. So it means that we're connected with them for eternity. So, having a conversation with your animal in spirit can be very powerful for the grief process. You can get answers to your questions, so you can have clarity about what happened. Was it their time to pass over? Why did they pass over? Sometimes parents don't have a medical diagnosis as to why the animal passed, but animals have good medical knowledge, so they can actually tell me what happened, and then that can answer your questions. Sometimes people wonder, should they have picked up earlier that there was something wrong, and would they have been able to prolong a quality life for their animal? So again, getting answers to questions means that you can get rid of some of the emotions you may have been carrying for some years, like guilt and remorse and regret. And our animals don't want us carrying these emotions. They know that we're grieving. They're grieving too, but through this conversation, with getting the answers to the questions, it can help you, and it also can help your animals, because not only do they get the chance to answer your questions and reconnect with you that way, but they also get a chance to pass on their messages to you. Now, often these are messages of love and gratitude, because they really appreciate the care and the love and the security you gave them in your home. And often for animals, it's their first opportunity to pass on these messages to their human parents. So it's actually very healing for humans and animals to have a mediumship conversation. So Winston was a very loved Saint Bernard dog, and he'd passed away almost 6 years before I met his mum. Now, his mum heard me talking on a podcast interview, and she was really intrigued to find out more about telepathic animal communication and very keen to learn. So, since Winston had passed away, Mum had adopted 2 more rescue dogs, and she was also looking after her mum's little dog, JC. And Winston had made a big impression during his lifetime, and he was very loved and obviously very missed since his departure. So when I first had a conversation with Winston, he didn't directly tell me that he was going to reincarnate in this lifetime. And so, in my experience talking with animals, when they know it's their destiny to return, and not every animal is destined to return in this lifetime, they can give me information, so they can let me know what species, what breed, what colour, what gender. Sometimes they can even be really specific with the rescue agency that they're at, and give a time frame for when their parents should be able to find them, and sometimes an age range of the animal whose body their soul is swapping into. This all sounds very strange and bizarre, but it's just something that the animals have taught me now, that they can negotiate with the soul of an animal in an existing living animal, for that soul to swap out so that their soul can swap in, so that they can be reunited with their family. Now, this doesn't have to be when the animal is conceived. They can swap in any number of years afterwards. So it doesn't have to be into a new puppy or kitten. It can be an older animal. And often in rescue animals, it does seem to be an older animal. So they might be 2 or 3 years old. And the soul who's been living in that animal very obligingly swaps out and goes back to heaven so that this soul can swap back in and go back to their family. So although he couldn't tell me about reincarnation, he was able to share very specific information about past lives with his mum. And I've been finding this now more and more in conversations, that some of the animals that we feel incredibly close bonds with, and we don't know why, are souls that we've had lifetimes with before. And that might be in this lifetime. So it may be a childhood pet who's reincarnated back to us, or it may be in past lives. And as in Winston's case, he was aware that he'd had lifetimes with his mum as a human and lifetimes with his mum as an animal. And so he was able to share timelines and specific details about those lifetimes with her. So that was absolutely fascinating, getting that information. Animals are also acutely aware that we've been going through a grief process. They also go through a grief process on the other side. And so Winston's specific message to his mum was that he wanted her to stop grieving. He knew that she loved him, and he wanted to reassure her that he was still loving her, but just wanted that grief process to end. And he did say that they would reconnect in the future and share lives together in the future, but he gave no more specific details to that. Now, sometime after that conversation, Mum was with her little dog, JC, and JC was showing some very unusual reactions. So Mum sensed that he was trying to get a message to her, but didn't know what the message was. And when I spoke with JC, he was actually getting a message from Winston for his mum. And so Winston wanted Mum to know that he had found a body to reincarnate in, and that he was going to come back as a female Weimaraner dog and a rescue dog, and Mum would be able to locate her soon. So that was very exciting, but also unexpected. But sometimes animals do swap gender to come back. It may not be their first preference, but if that's the body that's available that they can come back in, then they do. I thought it was going to be interesting for Mum to have 3 male dogs and then have a female dog, but Winston wasn't worried about that. I think he was just really keen to get back to his family, human and animal. So Mum diligently started searching for rescue Weimaraner female dogs that fitted the details that Winston had provided. And she did find a beautiful dog. She sent me a photo. And we thought everything was going really well. But then the people who owned the dog that was surrendering her selected a family who lived closer to them so that they could maintain contact with her. Now, it is really important for our animals because they don't understand why they're being surrendered and why they can't see their family anymore. So in this case, it was a really good outcome for the dog to be able to have a new family and maintain ties with her former family. But for Mum, it meant we had to wait until Winston could find another body to come back in. And so I've experienced this myself with one of my cats who was planning to come back, that the first body that he was going to come back in didn't work out. So sometimes the animals might pass away, or the person who has the animal may decide for various reasons that they're no longer available for adoption. So things can happen. It's not always smooth sailing, but I do want you to understand that when it's an animal's destiny to return, they will persevere until they find a body that their soul can move into so that they can come back to you. So again, sometime after the Weimaraner episode, Mum was having a mediumship conversation with Winston, and he told her that he was going to be coming back as a St. Bernard rescue puppy, which was very exciting. And he said he'd be about 3 months old and that Mum would find him in the next 4 weeks. So Mum went on her detective journey again to look for rescue puppies that fit the description that Winston had given. And she found this absolutely gorgeous puppy that you can see in the photo here. And she sent it to me just to check that he was the correct puppy. Sometimes our animals who are coming back, their soul waits until the humans have found the correct body before they actually do the soul swap. So what they've taught me is that the soul who's existing in the animal swaps out and goes back to heaven, so that the aspect of the soul coming in can then swap in and go back to their humans. So it's an aspect of Winston's soul, that moves into the puppy body. It's not 100% Winston's soul. A part of the soul stays on the other side. And this is something that they've taught me as well. So when I saw the photo, I tuned in and I could tell that, yes, this was the correct body that Winston was going to reincarnate in, but his soul hadn't actually swapped at that time. But once he knew Mum had found him, then he swapped in so that his soul was there when he was picked up to go home. And then he and Mum had a conversation about what name to call him. And often our animals in spirit have had lots of time to think about what they want to be called in their next lifetime. And so they ended up selecting Charlie as the name that he was very happy with and Mum was happy with. So Dad had to fly halfway across America to meet Charlie and to start the long journey home. And he sent Mum a few photos when he met him, and absolutely gorgeous puppy photos. And one of the really interesting things was that Charlie likes sleeping in the same posture that Winston likes sleeping in. So he used to have one paw tucked underneath his chest at the front and then have one leg extended at the back. And he did that from night one when Dad picked him up. And they had a long time to bond together on the journey home. And so once Charlie got home, he went and slept in the same place that Winston liked sleeping in. And he met all his dog brothers. Now, he didn't have any of those brothers when he was living as Winston, so that was all new to him to have this instant fur brother family to build bonds with. But he's taken that in his stride, as well as reuniting with his mum and dad. And from experience, when our animal souls swap in, you won't necessarily see a lot of their familiar characteristics and traits straight away. I have actually spoken to them to find out how it feels coming back in a different body. And they've said it's like putting on a new suit. They have to adjust to the flexibility and how they can move in the body. They may have been in a body before that had some physical issues, and now they might be in a body that's free of physical issues. So they have to explore their flexibility and strength and power and adjust to being in that new body. And so sometimes it can take a while for some of their familiar behaviours to start showing as they adjust to being in their new body. And that's exactly what's happened with Charlie. He started showing more and more of Winston's behaviours as he's grown older. So Winston used to just love leaning against his humans and letting all the weight go into them. And that's exactly what Charlie's doing now. And Winston used to love drinking his water and then leaving a trail of water behind him as he walked away from his bowl. And Charlie's now doing that as well. So lots of little similarities that you pick up. It's not 100% the same as last time. They're in a new body, and it's an aspect of the soul that reincarnates, not 100% of the soul. But there will be something that you recognise. So sometimes they do look very similar. Sometimes they're completely different. Obviously, when they come back as a completely different species, which some of them do, but there will be familiar things about them, and you will know beyond a doubt who they are. So as Charlie's grown, he just looks so similar to Winston, and he's just loving being at home, enjoying playing with his dog brothers and with his humans. Now, because he looked so like Winston, but the rescue agency wasn't 100% sure of his bloodlines, Mum was really curious about his background, so she arranged a DNA test. And to our surprise, he actually has 0% Saint Bernard genes in his bloodlines. So even though he looks like one, he's not. But it was so clever of him to say that he was a Saint Bernard rescue puppy so that Mum would actually find the right dog and bring him home. And I'm just in awe that our animals can do this. This isn't the first time I've experienced this, but it meant that he was able to come home. And so, as I said earlier, having a mediumship conversation can profoundly help the grief process for you and for your animal, and allow the release of emotions that you may have been storing for some time. And so, with having these various conversations, Mum knew that Winston was coming back, and with those specific details he provided about the puppy, she was able to locate him and then proceed with the adoption and bring him home. Winston's also an example that sometimes we have to wait to be reunited with our animal when it's their destiny to come back. Sometimes animals have the opportunity to reincarnate within a few months of when they left. So it's almost as though they never left. They've walked out the door and they've come back again. But with Winston, it was nearly 6 years of waiting to have him back. But despite that huge gap, Mum and Dad are just loving having him home, and he's loving being home as well. So if you have an animal in spirit, how can you connect with them? So there are a few ways that I can help you. So you can book an animal mediumship conversation with me, and I will connect with your animal in spirit and ask your questions on your behalf. I connect with animals through photographs, so I just need some photos of your animals showing their faces with eyes open, and I need their names so that I can introduce myself and get their permission to have a conversation. And then I ask your questions. Or I also offer an intuitive session, which is not an animal communication session. So this is where I have a Zoom session with you, and you read me a number of statements which would have a yes/no response, and I get an intuitive response to your question. So that can be about animals in spirit or humans in spirit. And that's the answers with Annie sessions. Or if you're really interested, you can learn how you can telepathically communicate with your own animals, either living or in spirit. So I offer my animal communication mentorship program where I work with you and 2 animals for 3 months, one-on-one, learning the various forms of telepathic communication. Now, if you don't have 2 living domestic animals with you at the moment, you're welcome to work with 1 or 2 of my cats who have already been working with clients. I like people working with at least 2 animals so that you get used to hearing different voices and different preferences for communication. So telepathic communication includes verbal, but you actually hear it in your head. It's not audible in your ear, and it's quite strange adjusting to hearing voices in your head which aren't your normal inner dialogue voice. Or animals can communicate through images. So somehow they've got the thought transference skill to put an image in your head so you might see a picture. Or they can put little videos in your head and you can see a little video. And they can also send emotions and feelings so you can feel those in your body. So during the program, we practice all those different methods of communication, and we also do a couple of mediumship sessions. So as part of the program, you have the opportunity to connect with your animals in spirit and get used to that ability to be able to hear them as well as hearing your living animals. So if you're interested in finding out more about an animal mediumship conversation or the intuitive conversation or learning how you can have the conversations yourselves, please message me on social media or email me. The details will be underneath the video. And I'd be happy to talk to you about how you can connect with your animals. I also have some other resources for animal parents. So on my website, which is www.cosmicheartintuitive.com.au, I have 4 guides for animal parents, which are free to download. And one of them is the guide about coping with pet loss. So I'd recommend you download that. I also have a podcast called What Animals Tell Me, where I share some of the interesting experiences I've had with animals. And I'd recommend that you listen to season 1, episodes 1 and 2. In episode 1, I talk about energetic visits from your animals in spirit. So once they've gone through a healing process, when they've passed over, they can actually come back energetically and visit. And your animals will know if there's a presence in the house because they're very sensitive to different energies. But it's really helpful for our animals in spirit to come back because they can reconnect with the animals in the family and connect with you. So you might actually see them or hear them or feel them, or in some cases even smell them when they come back for a visit. And it's very reassuring to know that they've transitioned safely and that they're maintaining that connection with you. In episode 2, I share some of my mediumship conversations with animals. And it's so fascinating to me that they're so intelligent that some of them actually give me what I now call a code word, where they say something in the conversation which is not relevant to anything we're talking about. It makes no sense to me, but it lets the parents know that I'm definitely talking with their animals. So I'm in awe of their ability to do this, and I share that in some of those stories. I also am loading more videos on my YouTube channel, so you're welcome to watch the videos there and subscribe to my channel so that you receive notification about new videos as they're loaded. I've recently published my 3rd book, Crossing the Bridge to Animal Consciousness. And I wrote this book particularly for bereaved animal parents because I want them to understand that there is life after life and there is hope. A lot of people aren't aware yet about the phenomenon of animal soul reincarnation. And I knew nothing about it until one of my cats let me experience it. And so now I know it happens, and I've experienced it so many times with clients as well. So this book is full of real life stories of animals who have reincarnated, and Winston's story is in the book as well. So I talk about animal soul journeys, what happens when our animals pass over, the energetic visits, and the animal soul reincarnation episodes. I'm describing this as the essential guide for animal parents. So if you've got animals, or you've got animals in spirit, or you've got family or friends who are currently grieving for an animal in spirit, then I'd highly recommend that you read this book. It will explain so much more to you and change your understanding of their journey and the life after life experience. Now, it's part 2 of my Bridging Animal Consciousness trilogy. I have yet to write book 3. And this series is being written to help raise global awareness of the importance of animals. So I want people to understand that animals have souls, that they understand everything we say, they feel emotions, and they're with us for a reason. But particularly understanding the soul journey and the reincarnation is so important. And then my other book, Evolving Hearts and Souls, The Guide to Spiritual Awakening, I wrote because when I had my spiritual awakening, I didn't know that's what was happening. I didn't know I could have a spiritual awakening, and I'd never read anything about it. And so I wanted to write a book to share some of my experiences, to make the journey less mysterious, and to help people have more certainty with what happens when really weird stuff starts to happen. So that's a standalone book. And then The Bridge to Animal Consciousness is the first book in the Bridging Animal Consciousness series. So all 3 paperbacks are available directly from me for anyone watching this video in Australia. So please email me and I can arrange getting the books to you. For anyone outside Australia, you can purchase your copies from your local Amazon online store. So thank you so much for listening and watching Winston's story. It is absolutely fascinating on a number of levels, and just a joy to see how much love Charlie is giving and receiving now that he's back with his family. So thank you for watching, and I hope you can join me for the next episode of Soulful Conversations. Thank you.